Communications Director for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who of course over the last few weeks has been in great need of good communications. But over the last few weeks, in fact, Dr. Yoaz Hendel has been on military reserve duty, fighting in the south. And so in preparation for today, on this topic of guerrilla warfare and the new battlefield, he's had some very, I think, up close and personal experience with the subject matter. Of course, Dr. Yoaz Hendel has a great deal of experience in this area as well, having lectured on it for a number of years at universities in Israel, as well as other subject area in Israel as a military historian. It's not clear? Okay.
I think you did better off without it.
Is that better?
Yes.
Without the microphone?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll see how your eyes goes with the microphone. We can always improve the sound. I can ask one of the library staff to come in and change it. So yes, as I was saying, Dr. Hendel has lectured at a number of academic institutions in Israel on the subject of military history, as well as having a great deal of frontline experience on the battlefield and as well facing the world media. So without any further ado, I welcome Dr. Hendel to the stage to address you on guerrilla warfare and the new battlefield. He will take some questions over the course of the coming 2 hours as well, so you'll have opportunity to ask those as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, especially in the morning, and the fact that you have time to see me and to hear, it's quite unique. You talked about personal aspects, and I think that everything is personal, especially when you're talking about Israel. And in Israel, I would say that it's a unique, one can find himself in a unique situation. And one day he's writing in a newspaper, he's publishing articles about what he needs to do and what we don't need to do and what the politicians are doing and what they are not doing and things like that. And the day after that, someone calls him to a reserve duty and he finds himself trying to practice his words and he's in the middle of the things that he wrote about. So everything is personal, including wars, peace, and I hope a lot of routine in Israel. And I will start maybe with a short story. As Michael mentioned, I just came back from the reserve duty in the south, and in 2009, when I came back from another operation in Gaza, and as you understand, in Israel we have every 2 years a new operation in Gaza, unfortunately, and we can write about it a lot and to speak about terrorism and to in the classrooms and in universities, but at the end of the day, every 2-3 years we have a new operation against guerrilla or terror organization. Yeah? Loud. Okay, I will try to use also the microphone. Okay. Now it's okay? Great. So, as you understand, every 2 years we have opportunity to check and to test our theories about guerrilla and about terror organizations and how to fight or how to win or how to defeat, if it's possible at all, those organizations, and this is what I would like to speak about. But before that, I would like to tell you a short story about the experience that I had in 2009 when I was a young lecturer in Bar Ilan University, and the university invited me to speak in front of ambassadors that were appointed in Israel from different countries, and they asked me to explain them about one of the subjects. Originally I'm a historian of the Second Temple period, and which is, as you know, I think the most interesting and the most debatable period in the Jewish history. But when I finished my PhD, I found out that there is no future in history, and I crossed the lines to political science. And I moved from Tel Aviv University to Bar Ilan University, and in that point I was invited to speak in front of a group of ambassadors on one of my research field was at that period how strong actors, which means states, can win small actors, which mean guerrilla and terror organizations. And without any planning, 1 month before that, the government of Olmert decided to go to an operation in Gaza Strip, and I found myself as every other young or as a lot of Israelis, I will say it like this, in the reserve duty and fighting in Gaza Strip. And then I came back, and 2 days after that I stood in front of this group of ambassadors, and they suddenly started asking me, and I explained them about small wars, and I wasn't the only one that speak over there. Shabtai Shavit, who was the head of the Mossad, also spoke in this event, and they started asking us about war crimes in Israel, that Israel have done in Gaza Strip. And I tried to explain them, and in Hebrew there is a sentence, a term that said that you cannot prove that you don't have any sister. And I tried to prove them that I have sister, but in this case that I don't have a sisters that are doing war crimes. And they continue asking me about war crimes and about what Israel have done in Gaza Strip just to remind you, in 2008, 2009, January 2009. And I tried to explain them, and then in one point I throw out my hat as academician, and I spoke about my job as an officer in reserve duty. I was a major in this point, and I told them that every briefing that I had in front of my soldiers, if you can calculate it, I will say that 30% of my briefings before operations was focused on, especially on how to avoid damaging any civilians, and how to maintain or how to make sure that we are separating between civilians and enemies. And they heard me continue arguing, and nothing happened. In that point, I understood that the guerrilla and terror, it's not only academic subject. The fact that in the world, two states cannot agree about what is terrorism, the fact that terrorists in the eyes of one become a labor warrior in the eyes of another, it means a lot. It means that we cannot cooperate in the war on terrorism. Now you can find different agreements and different common ground regarding pirates in Somalia. You can find the US and Iran operating together in order to fight those phenomena, but you cannot find any kind of agreements, or let's say you cannot find a common ground between different states about guerrilla and about terrorism. And you can just see what happened with Hamas, that until 2 months ago, many countries in the West thought that it's worth to sit and to speak with Hamas because it's not exactly a terror organization, and how Israel treats this issue, and to understand that this is one of the most important, influential subjects at least in the present challenges of Israel, and I think that maybe in the world, because for the last 50 years, more than 95% of the wars in the world are wars against small organizations, against terror and guerrilla. The wars that we knew from the past, the wars that we knew from history, are not exist anymore, or at least there are almost non-normal wars, as we call it. Wars that you find one army that stand against another army, and there is a line, and all the sides know exactly what to do, and you know where it's starting and where it's finishing, and what is the meaning of finishing war and what is the meaning of starting wars. Those situations are not exist anymore, and we are, at least Israel, finding itself in a different situation, with different challenges that we need to understand. But before that, I would like to ask you to have some kind of patience, and I would like to get deeper a bit about theory and how all this issue grew up in the Western culture and in the modern culture in general, and how the modern world found out that there is a kind of this kind of phenomena in the world. Now, is there anyone here that knows Spanish? Guerilla. Do you know where it's coming from? The word guerrilla? Guerra, right. Guerra, it's a war, and guerrilla, it's a small war. Now, this word came at the beginning of the 19th century, when Napoleon fought the Spanish, and he found himself with a strong army fighting something that he didn't know before that, guerrilla warfare. And he found himself fighting in a battlefield without rules that he knew before that. And the world find himself, or the different sources, different researchers in this period found themselves with something new, with something that they didn't understand completely. And why they didn't understand? Because in the Middle Age, there were rules. If you belong to some kind of an army, or if you are a knight, or if you are fighting against another army, there are straight rules: how to fight, where to fight, when to fight. And those new farmers that fought the Napoleon army had no rules. They came in the night in small groups. They fought against small units. They didn't have any kind of respect, which is part of what we thought in this period, or before that this is part of war, because war, it's everything, as the ancient Greek said. And it becomes something that people try to understand. Clausewitz and Little Hart and other historians, military historians, try to understand what is a guerrilla and what is a small wars. And in this period also, the term of small wars become popular, become a part of the discussion. Now, one can say that there are two types of guerrilla warfare. Everything, by the way, at least in the Israeli army, you can separate everything that you have. You can separate it to three items, but in the research there are two. You have offensive guerrilla warfare and defensive guerrilla warfare. Now, everyone can say and can look on his every guerrilla warrior, every terrorist warrior, every terrorist can look on this, on what he is doing, and to define what it belongs to. But if you are taking the defense guerrilla warfare, it means that there is an army that conquered your territory, and now you are fighting against it, which means that those farmers against Napoleon, if you want, Vietnam War, when the Viet Cong fought the Americans, the first India-China War with the French, the French against the Algerians, the Soviets against the Soviets in Afghanistan, and if you want, the Hamas see Israel see the fight against Israel as a defense war. There is also offensive war, which means that one used guerrilla or terrorism in order to attack another enemy, but not as a strategic tool, but as a tactical tool. You can take Lawrence, the man of Arabia, when he used the Bedouins in order to fight the Ottoman Empire. You can find commando units that are doing this kind of fights against other armies. And the main difference is between one that sees guerrilla as tactic and one that sees guerrilla as strategic tool. Now it's important to understand that, because when you look on the last 1 month in Israel, actually you see a mix between tactics and strategy, because to dig tunnels in order to fight, in order to kill Israelis, like the Hamas have done in the Gaza Strip, it sounds very difficult, and believe me, a lot of Israelis are afraid now, especially Israelis that live in kibbutz in the south are afraid to come back to their homes. And there is a huge debate in Israel what they need to do and how they can trust the IDF in order to maintain them alive again and to live there again. But it's a tactical tool. It's not going to influence strategically on Israel. But at the same time, when Hamas launched rockets on Ben Gurion airport, and he is influencing the Americans to stop the flights of American companies to Israel, and then the Europeans stopped the flights for a few hours, not for a long time. This is a strategic tool. This is influence Israel and could influence Israel in a deep, deep way. Now, Clausewitz thought that, and he is also from the 19th century, thought that guerrilla warfare is something that belongs to the population. It's not an army tool. It's something that the population, that the farmers can do. And he saw it as a low warfare, something that belonged to people without dignity, without respect. And this is how he thought things. At the same time, there were, or later, Lenin thought that guerrilla is the puppet tool in order to make a social revolution. And there were others that thought that terror and guerrilla can influence and can change things. And when you cannot defeat the enemy, maybe you can hurt him a little bit, and this is exactly what the terror and guerrilla organization tries to do now. Now, if you check what's happened in Vietnam, for example, the Viet Cong couldn't defeat the Americans. If you're checking it from an army from a military point of view, they had enough power, enough airplanes, enough soldiers, even that they had many, many casualties. They had enough power to defeat the Viet Cong. But the Viet Cong didn't look for defeating. It just looked for how to contain and how to maintain this war as long as it can until this Western country and and the American society will break. And I will speak about it in the second part of my lecture. Now, in the 60s, in the beginning of the 60s, every officer in the army, in the American army, had to read 2 books of guerrilla leaders. One of them belonged to Che Guevara, right? And the other one? Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong. 2 books that every officer should had to read before when he is in the officer's school. And it became a kind of the Bible, and the Bible of how to fight guerrilla warfare. And it was very straight and with a lot of rules, and it was quite simple to an American officer or to someone that grew up in a democratic society to understand what they want. Because Mao Zedong wrote everything in rules. He wrote what are the levels of the guerrilla warfare and what is the purpose of the guerrilla warfare. Che Guevara wrote exactly what is the target of guerrilla warfare. And Che has his own experience with Castro, how to break a monopoly of government and how to do it very easily in a very fast way. And it was very easy to understand. When Che or when Mao Zedong is writing about the levels of guerrilla, it's something that one can use when he wants to fight terrorism. The first level is to contain the new militaries that coming into the country. The second level is to fight him, and then the third level is to fight him harder. It sounds nice and it sounds very easy. And if one wants to fight this terrorism, you just need to avoid letting them continue and then to fight them back. And it's a kind of a normal scenario. And when Che Guevara is writing about the fact that every guerrilla fighter needs to love his country, and he needs to put social pressure, and he needs to use to convince people, and he needs to use propaganda in order to convince the society. It's very easy. And when Mao Zedong is writing about the fish in the water, you know what is the fish in the water? Every fish needs water, and Mao Zedong thought that, and he was right, by the way, until today, thought that every guerrilla organization, because Mao saw himself as a guerrilla organization, every guerrilla fighter, warrior, needs to be part of his society, and needs to be without his colleagues, without his people. He doesn't worth nothing, because if you fight an army without this mixing between civilians and military activists, it's very easy to your enemy to eliminate you or to defeat you. Now one can see that also in Gaza Strip. If tomorrow morning the Hamas, for example, has something like 12,000 activists, not all of them are not all of them using weapons, but most of them are jihadistic warriors. Most of them are willing to sacrifice their life, and most of them will not go to the front line and will call the IDF to fight with them. Why not? Because if they will go to the border and will stand there and will look for and will say to the IDF, we are waiting for you to fight with you on this front line, they will defeat it in, 1 hour, 2 hours, or whatever. The only powers that they have is this mixing between water and the fish. The only powers that they have is the fact that they can live inside the civilian society. And Mao Zedong wrote about it. Now, there are a few levels that Mao Zedong and others also, the Vietnamese leaders, and Clausewitz and Marx and Engels and other people wrote about when they talked about guerrilla. They all had some kind of ideological view about themselves and about the enemy, and about the mix between, or about the clash between the enemy and them. They saw themselves as the people that came to make Tikkun Olam. This is how they saw themselves. We know Tikkun Olam from our Jewish heritage, and they create their own Tikkun Olam, and they thought that they want to make the world better. And when Castro and Che finished with the revolution in Cuba, they initiate a new organization to fight in Africa in order to change, not because they had some kind of heritage in Africa or because they saw themselves as Africans, just because they want to make Tikkun Olam, because they want to deliver the message of how to make the world better and how to fight leaders, capitalistic leaders, and how to deliver the vision. Now you know that Che Guevara was actually the CIA killed Che Guevara in Bolivia, and he went over there because he started a new revolution, and he looked for different revolutions. Now, if we want to understand what the Hamas and other organizations, Al-Qaeda and other organizations doing today, we need to understand what guerrilla organizations have done before. And I'm telling that not because I think the Hamas is sitting in schools and studying about Che Guevara and Mao Zedong. It was like that in the 60s and in the 70s. When you check the stories of the PLO activists and other terror organizations in the 70s and in the 60s and even in the 80s, you see that they read every book about guerrilla, and in the camps in different places, they educated the young generation about those terms and about those ideological, and they even communicate with different terror and guerrilla organizations in different places, the IRA and the PLO, you can find, they found a common ground because they saw themselves as as people that are trying to make things better, and even those that they actually kill people. But today, the Hamas is not an organization that's based on Che Guevara or on Mao Zedong. The Hamas is an organization that's based on its own fundamentalistic vision, how to fight the West in general and how to fight Israel in particular. Al-Qaeda, it's an organization that wants to bring the missing imam when he's accepting the Iranian vision, and if not, he wants to bring or to create his own Islamic state. Daesh, which is the new organization that you probably heard about, which is now killing or slaughtering people in Iraq and now in the border between Syria and Jordan, is also an organization that's trying to create his own Muslim state with his own rules, and is not willing to accept other types of Muslims. And they all do not speak about Tikkun Olam, as we called it in an absurd way. They all talk about Muslim values, fundamentalistic Muslim values, but they all doing the same things, and they all based on the same assumptions as guerrilla organizations have done in the past. Now, if you read one of the most important articles of Lawrence, one of the things that he said in the past is that guerrilla needs to find the sensitive points of the enemy. He thought about train rules, he thought about units that were in the desert. He thought about tactic, which means to send small, to send 3-4 people in the night to attack 1 or 2 soldiers and to go back. And he thought that the best thing to do is to bring the military, in that period the Ottoman military in the First World War, to open his hands as much as he can. And this is why he wrote that guerrilla warfare or commando warfare, and he did it in the name of Britain, should take place only in a wide area, which means that if you want to fight a guerrilla, if you want to fight with a guerrilla organization, if you want to use guerrilla tactics, you need to do it in a very wide place. And the same thing wrote Mao Zedong. He saw China, and he understood from his own experience that the best thing is to find a huge country and to fight against, and now be in a huge country. And it's become kind of the logic that the American officers understood after that. Now, if you compare it to Gaza Strip again, or to Lebanon, or even to parts of Afghanistan, you will find out that the opposite, that it's actually the opposite side. Gaza, it's a small place, and they are doing a lot of troubles. In Afghanistan, which is a wide area with mountains, there are small parts that are the most difficult to fight in. If you check what's going on in Lebanon, the most difficult areas to fight, it's in Beirut and in the places that are south to Beirut, in the south of Lebanon, which is very populated with villages and small towns. And it's not working, at least by the theory of Lawrence and others. Now, Lawrence also talked about the fact, the manpower. He said that every group which has more than 2 people it's too big. And it's a small thing, because when you see what actually the terror organization understood without any school, military school, without West Point, without any kind of theoretical lessons, what they're doing is to try to find or to create many as they can front lines. And this is why they actually fight in an urban area, because they know that there is no front line. You can do it in one place and in another. You can fight in one house and in another. And if you check what the Hamas, for example, have done this time, Israel couple of different couples in tunnels, just to wait until the IDF will come. And we found in Gaza Strip, at least in 4 or 5 times, a couple of Hamas terrorist activists that were waiting for more than 3 weeks in the same hall, only with water and olives, in order to wait to the right moment that the IDF will come, and then to wait to the right moment until they will cross them, and then to go out and to fight, maybe to kill one soldier. The whole purpose of them was to wait until the IDF will come to create another front line. Now, but in order to create what the Hamas have done in Gaza, in order to dig underground city, in order to put rockets inside schools and hospitals, you have to use you have to convince or to force the population in the place, inside the place that you are fighting in, to cooperate with you. Now, it's interesting because Mao Zedong, when he wrote about it, and I told you that he liked rules, he wrote a few rules how to treat the environment, how to treat the civilian population. And he spoke about, and I will just read it, I'll read a few rules that he had. And it's very simple, in a very Chinese way, but it's interesting. He said, first of all, close the doors when you leave the house. If you are staying in a place of someone, just close the door when you are leaving. Take the bed or the shatiach, how to say shatiach? Carpet. Just take the carpet that you slept on and take it back with you. Speak use your manners. Take all the belongings that you took, or bring back all the belongings that you took. Be decent with your business. If you're doing business in this city or village, be decent. Pay for your things that you took, and keep the place clean. He had 8 rules, and this is what every guerrilla Chinese guerrilla warrior had to study and to take it next to his heart and to understand it completely, because he understood that if you want to be a fish, you need the water. And the same thing is doing the Hamas. The Hamas started as a charity organization. He gave money to different organizations, to poor people. He paid salaries for teachers. He created schools, fundamentalistic Muslim schools, but the schools, he created charities, organizations. By the way, most of the money, and this is another issue for another lecture, but most of the money came from the West. The charity organization raised all this money, part of the money in the US and in Europe, in other countries. And it's exactly what they have done without reading. I think so. I'm not sure that they didn't read his book, but without reading and without reading the rules of Mao Zedong. Of course, that in one point the situation is differently. When 7 protesters came out in Gaza Strip 2 weeks ago and said that they have no power to fight anymore, and they want a ceasefire between the Hamas and Israel, and they asked the Hamas to stop launching rockets because they cannot live like that anymore, the Hamas activists killed them immediately. So of course it's quite different in between theory and practice, By the way, Mao Zedong also wasn't a kind of tzaddik. He killed a lot of people, even those that he spoke about to be polite and about manners. Now, Che Guevara also spoke about gaining the support of the population, and he spoke that, and he was much more, I would say, even those that the American paint him also as a terrorist, he was, I think, much more moral than others, and he spoke about the morality code of the guerrilla fighter, and he spoke how to help the farmer economically and to make sure that this area is developed after they are leaving. It was very easy because he had his own experience in Cuba, and it was different experience than others. And but still, the same ideas, the same conclusions that every guerrilla fighter, every terror organization needs support from his own people, was inside those people and others after that. Another aspect of guerrilla and terror organization, and this is a different issue, we spoke about the support and the charity and the money that they raised in order to maintain the organization, Hamas organization, also the Hezbollah. What we didn't say that says that there is another interesting or important support when if you are planning to initiate a guerrilla or terror organization tomorrow morning, you need to understand. And this is the outside support. Who supports the Hezbollah today? Qatar, Qatar becomes an important actor today, but who supports Iran? Iran is giving a lot of money to Hezbollah. Actually, in 2006, after the second Lebanon war, they cut the budget of Hamas, and it was a big issue. Why they cut the budget? Because they didn't plan that the Hamas will create an attack on Israel. They saw in this period, they thought that Israel is going to attack, to strike, to have a military strike on the nuclear project, and they saw the Hezbollah, who was proxies of Iran, they saw it as a strategic tool, and they invest a lot of money in the Hezbollah. All the missiles, all the training, everything was based on Iranian money. Even those that they are very poor Iranians that live in Iran, they deliver a lot of money and a lot of weapons to Hezbollah. Part of it through Syria, part of it directly. And when the Hezbollah kidnapped, I just remind you, kidnapped those two soldiers, two bodies in this period, they saw it as a huge mistake. Why a huge mistake? Because Israel actually eliminated most of the long-range rockets in 40 minutes. 90% of those rockets were eliminated in the first 40 minutes. And then they had a long war, which was also debatable in Israel, but influenced the Hezbollah and actually shrink his power to defend or to create another war if Iran wants to. And Iran, the Guardian Revolution leader spoke with Nasrallah and or with his presenter, and they cut the budget, and it was a huge challenge for Hezbollah as a terror organization for those years. Now the Hezbollah is again at the same point with all those rockets, more than those rockets of the number of rockets in 2006, but this was a huge issue. Now, when you see that Iran supporting the Hezbollah, you can understand that you always need to find the actor behind the terror organization or the guerrilla organization. We spoke about Hamas. Who is supporting Hamas today? Politically today Qatar, but Military Iran also. Iran is also an important actor. Who's supporting? Who support the Viet Cong? China. And you can find actually in every place, in every terror organization or guerrilla organization, you will find someone that is standing behind him and giving him the support. Now the support could come in 3 levels or in different levels, because if one understands that the goal of a terror or guerrilla organization is not to defeat the enemy, he understands that there are other targets. And he understands that the support can influence in other levels or in other dimensions. So one dimension is, of course, the military support and the economic support, which means a lot, because in order to initiate a battle, in order to fight, in order to disturb the enemy, in order to create tunnels, as the Hamas have done, in order to launch rockets, you need money. So this is the first level. What is the second level? Politically support. Because I don't know, I left Israel and I told Michael, I almost had doubts if I'm leaving Israel in this kind of period, and I was in the duty until 1 week before that, and my wife wasn't happy from the fact that I left her for 2 weeks and now I'm leaving again. But at the moment, and I don't know if this ceasefire that we have today is going to continue for a long time, but I know one thing, that at the moment that this battle will finish, we are going to find ourselves in a new battle, in a new war. A low warfare, a political warfare, a war on the legitimation of Israel to defend itself. Now, you all probably heard about the Committee for Human Rights in the UN, which is, of course, biased organization and other things. But the fact that one can influence or an actor that is not really holding direct fight or direct line with you can influence your future. It's one of the important tools of those organizations. Now, if you see that the Arabic League is initiating committees time after time, and if you see what's happened since Durban 2001, and I will speak about it maybe later if I have time, you can understand that the real fight is not a military fight. Is not how to eliminate rockets or how to defeat the enemy or how to kill or to find or to convince the populations that it's not worth to fight with Israel. It's how to make sure that the outcomes of this war is not influencing or limiting Israel in the future or any other actor in the future. Now, let's take, for example, the event with the flotilla, with the Marmara. If you remember, there was a ship with IHH activists, which is a terror organization in some countries, including Israel, but in other countries it's a charity organization. And one should understand that if you are going to Europe, there are IHH activists that are part of NGOs, charity activists, and if you are going to other countries, they will become terrorist members, which is important because it means that they can move free from place to place, and when they are going to a flotilla like this and trying to get into Israel, it means that it's not clear that Israel is the good in this story and they are the bad. It's not clear, at least for many people. Now, if you check in what happened in this event, actually it was a tactical event. Israel, the Navy SEALs of Israel had got control of one ship. They fought. 9 people were killed in this event. I'm sure that they didn't mean to, and I'm saying it because, from my first knowledge, I served 6 years in the Israeli Navy SEALs, and I'm still doing my reserve duty over there. And I know that they didn't mean to kill people. They came there with unkilling weapons at the beginning. But this is what happened in the tactical event. At the same day, there were more than 10 people. I think there were, I don't remember exactly the number, I think about 50 people, 50 Muslims that were slaughtered in other countries, Arabic countries. And at the same time, of course, Muslims killed Muslims all over the world in different places. Like when we are talking today about those, unfortunately, and I'm saying unfortunately because Israel has a different code, moral code, unfortunately almost 2,000 people that have been killed in this war. I think most of them are terrorists, but part of them are civilians. I'm talking about the current war. It's also something that it's not pleasant, and I'm sure that no one wants to hear about it or to find himself in this kind of scenario. But this is happening in the war. But at the same time, we're talking about more than 170,000 people that have been slaughtered in Syria next to it, and there is no UN committee to check what's going on over there, and there is no country in the world that asks the Syrians to stop, since Assad is continuing doing that. And the same in Nigeria, when you find people that kidnap young girls in order to convert them to Islamic tradition and other really bad and unpleasant phenomena in the world. And I'm saying that because when you check what happened with those 9 people after that they have been killed, it's unbelievable. There were 1 committee in Israel, investigating committee in Israel, 2 investigating committees at the UN, 1 committee at the US. We have a lot of flags that the committees, the UN committees, finish the work with balanced conclusions. They blamed Israel, but they said that Israel has the right to defend itself and to maintain a siege on a sea siege on Gaza in order to prevent them to bring weapons to the Gaza Strip. Now, the day after that, Israel also took a few decisions regarding the things that Israel or other countries can deliver to Gaza Strip. Today, maybe we understand that part of it was mistake to bring conquer to Gaza, to bring things that helping building materials to Gaza. Maybe it's not the right or the most clever things that Israel have done in the history, but in that period, those 9 people, those 9 terrorist activists of IHH changed actually strategically the way of thinking inside Israel, and this is one of the most important things that we need to understand when we are talking about guerrilla organizations. We need to move to the questions, or are we?
You've got a few minutes and then.
A few minutes, all right. Now, when you check what those founders, we can say, of guerrilla thinking, wrote about the targets and about how to make things move, they wrote mainly about the military aspects. And why they wrote about military aspects? Because they haven't any kind of experience with the new human rights religious, or with the new human rights aspects which influence today the guerrilla and the terror warfare. Now, Mao said that Mao Zedong said that they need to be that they need to bridge gaps with the populations and to find a way to attack the enemy in the night. And Clausewitz said that the guerrilla, and Clausewitz belonged to the strong actor side, said that the guerrilla is actually an organization, or it's actually a method or tactics that one should use only in a small operations, and they should be separate. And others said that different things about how to use those tactics, but no one of them thought that it's going to influence the political arena in this kind of a way. No one of them thought that it could change and maybe to defeat strong actors, and especially to create the big question that existing in academia and in other places, if at all strong actors can win in small wars, if at all strong armies can defeat guerrilla and terror organizations. Now, before I'm moving to the second part, I must tell you that my answer is yes. But at the same time, I must tell you that there are many Israelis and many other people that think that it's impossible. And they look and they use the examples from Vietnam and Algeria and Afghanistan, and you know that the Soviets weren't parve. They were strong and determined to defeat the Taliban in this period. And they all went back without outcomes, or without the proper outcomes that they thought that they will have. The Americans, as you know, when they came back, they said that they won, and in 1 month, actually, the Viet Cong got control on all of Vietnam, more than 1 month, but at the end of this year, Vietnam became a communist country. Today you can find there McDonald's, but history is a bit, the history perspective is different, but at that period it was obvious that the communist approach won. And one of them thought that it's possible at all to raise this kind of subject and to make him the most important challenge of a modern armies. Now, I will leave it to the second part, but before I'm saying that, I just want you to think about the examples inside Israel about defeating terror and terror organizations, because in Israel, I know that there are people that the Palestinians or the terror Palestinians organization as a freedom fighters, but I see them as a terrorists. If you check the Israeli experience, it's a mixed experience. We dropped from Lebanon, even those that people or leaders of Israel declared that it's in Israeli interest to be in South Lebanon, and we dropped from Lebanon. We dropped from Gaza, and without any connection to the political debate. Even those that people, part of the leaders, including Ariel Sharon, said that it's an Israeli interest to be there, but at the same time, the second Intifada, Aksa Intifada, which was one of the most difficult challenges of Israel in the past, when we thought that it's impossible to defeat suicide bombers, because who can stop one that wants to kill himself? Who can stop a person that is willing to sacrifice life in order to kill you? We were able to stop this phenomenon. We were able to stop those events, and from a period in 2002, which we had more than 50 events of suicide bombers. In 2007, we had only one suicide bomber, and today we have other terrorist attacks in Judea and Samaria from time to time, but it's not the same. Actually, if you check on all the terms, we defeated the suicide bombers phenomena, and if you want to say, we finished the second Intifada in a different way, but still the debate exists, and I will talk about it in the second part. Now we can open it to a few minutes of questions on this first part. Yeah.
You're talking about guerrilla warfare opening up lots of fronts. One of the things I was very surprised is that Hezbollah didn't come in and open up another front against Israel. Are they too busy in Syria or what?
First of all, this is one of the aspects that a lot of Israelis thought that we need to use because this is happened to be that the Hezbollah is focusing on Syria right now, and it might not happen in the second time or in the next time that the Hamas will launch a military attack on Israel. And this is part of the reasons why many military seniors thought that this is the right period to defeat, to get into Gaza and to finish the Hamas. This is why a lot of Israeli politicians thought that maybe we need to do a different type of war. But you can never really know what is the interest of the Hezbollah. After the Second Lebanon War, I will say it like this, before the Second Lebanon War, Nasrallah called Israel, the Israeli society, a spider net, which can break off very easily. After the Second Lebanon War, he said that he didn't accept this kind of a fight from Israel. He didn't accept that Olmert is going to send the military straight to Lebanon. And there is a big debate, and I don't have the right answer why the Hezbollah is not involved right now. It might be Iran, which gave him an order not to be involved right now. It might be Syria. He lost lots of activists in the Syrian war. It might be the fact that the Israeli deterrence is still working after 8 years, and maybe it will, deterrence is something that in the head of people and not something that we can measure. But I have no good answer. I know that probably, and it's always important to understand that every terror and guerrilla organization has logic. It's not that they are working without logic. They have logic, they have targets, they are trying to achieve something, they are trying to influence on something, and right now the logic of the Hezbollah is not to get involved inside this military aspect, military operation. And don't forget that with all the respect to Hezbollah and to Hamas, if tomorrow morning there is a war, the Hezbollah is launching a military strike on Israel, Israel can defend itself. It's not that the army cannot do anything with Hezbollah, and I think that they understand. Yeah.
I've got two questions. One is regarding Hezbollah. Apparently their tunnel system is more developed than the Hamas's tunnel system. Is that correct?
We don't know. There are assumptions that they also create tunnels in order. There are two types of tunnels, first of all, and I'm saying that not because I have one chapter in my PhD doctorate about Bar Kokhba tunnels, and nothing is new under the ground, as you know. But today there are two types of tunnels. One tunnel is offensive tunnels, and one type of tunnels is defensive tunnels. Most of the Israel is talking about today about the offensive tunnels, which the Hamas dig behind or under the border in order to attack Israeli villages in the south. The Hezbollah is expert in what we call the natural parks. This is how we called it in the Second Lebanon War, which is an offensive tunnels, actually headquarters of under the ground. Nothing is new. If you went to Vietnam and you saw what they have done there in the 60s and before that, there is nothing to compare. The Viet Cong create actually hospitals under the ground, schools under the ground, and we are talking only about tunnels, nice tunnels, very strong ones with a lot of experience, but still in offensive tunnels. That the only target that they had is to, at the beginning, was to smuggle things inside the Gaza from Rafiah, but today we are talking about offensive tunnels that were targeted inside Israel. There are assumptions that the Hezbollah is doing the same. We don't know anything about it. Yeah.
How do you...
Intelligence. Where is the intelligence that we should know what they are doing?
Intelligence always trying to understand, can never understand everything, can never have everything, even though that we have a strong intelligence corps.
How do you assess the military success of the current, Gaza action? How long it will take them to rebuild what they build and kind of present a threat to Israel?
I have no clue. And you know what? Because after the Second Lebanon War, and people like me wrote in newspapers, columns, and politicians said that it was a big failure, and in 1 year we will find ourselves in a new war. And you know what? 8 years after that, we are still at the same point, and the Hezbollah still has his own interest, and probably the deterrence is still working, and they are not preparing to launch a military strike. Regarding the issue of military achievements of the Hamas, or how they are going to gain again the rockets they used in this war, I don't have also any clue. I hope that we will be able, since the Egyptians right now in the right side, I hope that we will have the opportunity to stop the smuggling into Gaza. I'm not sure that this is what's going to happen, because, and I will speak about it again, this is a tactical tool that they're using it in order to achieve strategic achievements. And so they might gain again some military tools. I'm sure that Iran will try to bring them a new missile, especially after what they will say the day after the military success, but I have no good answer. Yes.
Every time there's a war, I ask myself, why does Israel always stop short? Obviously with the pressure of America and others, why they don't go and finish the job as one would like it to be. I understand they would have the military might, but it's just sort of a dead end each time that they go in there, they lose people, and they get the bad publicity, and the whole thing just starts again, only in a bigger way. When it's going to be bad if they go to the end, but at least it would be done.
Allow me to speak about it in the second part, because this has become one of the most important things, or one of the most difficult challenges in this kind of warfare. It's about legitimation and about what brings strong actors to recruit, or what brings strong actors to drop from this kind of wars. And especially in Israel, legitimation become the most influential tool, or the most influential, dangerous, or the most important limitation on military power, but we'll speak about it in the second part, and we'll have now a break of 10 minutes. Thank you.